Chapter 19. Bumping into Brenda. They both froze and fell dead silent. Who else could possibly be out on the street in the middle of the night on Christmas Eve? A snuffle sort of sound broke through the cold, quiet air. They heard it again and both knew that there was definitely someone else nearby. Who's there? Called William nervously, hoping that no one would reply. The Christmasaurus backed up a little like a scared puppy until it was almost sitting on William's lap. Then he heard it again. Snuffle, snuffle. Someone was crying. Hello, are you okay? William said kindly in the direction of the snuffling sobs. They seemed to be coming from behind a small bush in the garden of the house in front of where they were standing. Don't come any closer, or I'll smash your face in, snapped a snotty, stuffy voice from behind the leaves. William recognised her voice at once. It was the last person he'd ever want to bump into, Brenda Payne. Quick, get out of sight, William whispered to the Christmasaurus. He didn't want Brenda getting a glimpse of his new dinosaur. He had to stay a secret. But it wasn't that Brenda and William were used to it. He'd never ever seen Brenda Payne cry before. He didn't know Brenda had any feelings other than anger, hate and horribleness. This was something he had seen with his own eyes. Are you crying? William asked as he wheeled himself across the snowy pavement towards Brenda's front gate. What are you doing? Go away. I'm completely fine, snapped Brenda. Okay, William shrugged. But just as he was about to wheel himself away again, something stopped him. His wheelchair wouldn't budge. He tried to leave again, but he was stuck. Then he realised that he was just still attached to the dinosaur by the string of the fairy lights and the baubles and the tinsel. His eyes followed them to where the dinosaur was standing and saw a kind, caring sort of expression on a wonderfully scaly face. The dinosaur couldn't speak, of course, at least not like you and me, but he had feelings just the same. He's something feelings are loud enough to be understood better than any words. As William looked into the dinosaur's icy blue eyes, it was as though he could hear his thoughts as clearly as if he was speaking perfect English, with a slight North Pole accent, of course. The Christmasaurus huffed with his nose, crossed his eyes and nodded in the direction of Brenda. William instantly knew that the dinosaur was saying, "Girl needs friend." William sighed. He hated to admit it, but the Christmasaurus was right. Every bone in his body wanted to get away from Brenda. But not one, not even Brenda Snotty Payne, deserved to be crying alone in her front garden on Christmas Eve. You stay, William mouthed to the Christmasaurus, who immediately packed his bottom on the snowy street by Brenda's gate like an obedient dog, looking very happy with himself at managing to convince William to help the girl. William unlooped the string of fairy lights from his chair, pushed open Brenda's gate and wheeled himself into the garden below. It was something he had never thought he'd do. As he wheeled towards the sound of sobs and sniffles, he glanced at her house. He'd seen her house many times before, but he usually whizzed by as fast, hoping he wouldn't see him, that he'd never paid much attention to it. Not for the first time he'd noticed that it stood out from a little sore thumb among the other houses. Whichever way William looked in the street, every house was covered with some sort of Christmas decoration. Some had flashy dancing lights, others had simple wreaths. William's, of course, had all Christmas decorations that Dad could afford, covering every inch of their little wonky house. But Brenda's was completely dark, cold and utterly un-Christmassy. Through the window, William could see no sign of a Christmas tree, no sign of Christmas cards at the fireplace, no wreath in the door, and most of all, no presents. I don't want to laugh at all, said William truthfully, for William was seeing, looking at normal at its time of year, was a little creepy. Why don't you have any Christmas decorations, he asked. If I tell you, you'll hate me, said Brenda. I already hate you, said William, so you might as well tell me. Brenda looked up at William and the corner of her mouth twitched with a tiny smile. William smiled back and they both let out a laugh. That was weird. Don't you like Christmas? Asked William. Of course I do. It's her, Brenda said as she pointed to a figure of a woman pacing inside the house. William recognised her at once. It was the Scroogey lady he and Dad had been passing every time in the postbox a few years ago. She was the most serious-looking woman William had ever seen, and her skin was pale as the moon. As William watched her, he'd noticed that he was gripping a piece of paper. "That's my mum," said Brenda. William gasped. Brenda's mum couldn't have been any more the opposite of William's dad. She was dressed in old pyjamas. Her expression was more like she was heading to a funeral rather than enjoying Christmas, even though she seemed seriously serious. William could see instantly that Brenda got her annoying, perfectly prettiness from. Her mother was as beautiful, or at least she would have been if she didn't look so awfully sad. When William looked close, he noticed it wasn't paper she was ripping to shreds. It was Christmas cards. "Why is she ripping up Christmas cards?" William asked. Brenda struggled to get the words out. "She hates Christmas." And she said she scrunched up perfectly round snowball in her hand and launched it at the front of her house. "But why?" William asked. "How can anyone hate Christmas? Does your dad hate Christmas too?" Brenda paused with her trembling handful of half-made snowball. "What is it?" asked William, sensing that she was keeping something secret. He glanced quickly at the dinosaur peeping over the wall. He was scared but encouraging William. William watched Brenda take a deep breath. Whatever was she about to say was obviously very difficult. "I don't have a dad," said Brenda, just like that. "Oh," replied William. "Oh," replied William. "Well, I do have a dad. It's just I don't see him anymore," Brenda explained. "My mum and dad got divorced a year ago. 1 year ago exactly on Christmas Eve." William looked up at the cold, dark, undecorated house and began to understand. "My mum used to love Christmas, but this year she says it reminds her too much of Dad. So," Brenda gulped hard and finished rolling her snowball, "so she's cancelled Christmas." As those awful words left her lips, the single teardrop formed in her eye, and she felt the snowball she was holding. She quickly threw it at the wall and made another one. William sat thinking of everything he had just heard. For the first time ever, he actually felt sorry for Brenda Payne. Was this why she was the way she was? William imagined he would like to have lived with Brenda undecorated house with no Christmas at all. It made him shudder. "When did your mum and dad get divorced?" Brenda asked. William remembered many nasty things she had said in school and decided it was about time she knew the truth. "My parents aren't divorced," William said. "My mum died a long time ago." Brenda froze. Her pale cheeks suddenly flushed red. William guessed that she was remembering what she'd said too. "It's okay, you didn't know," said William, and he scooped up a handful of snow, packed it into a neat ball and offered it to Brenda. Brenda was too embarrassed to say anything, but sometimes the right words just don't exist anyway. She just stood there and cried again. William caught a glimpse of the Christmasaurus's eyes peeking over the top of Brenda's wall. The dinosaur looked at Brenda, then back at William, and gave a little nod with his head. "Hug." William screwed his face up. There's no way he was going to give Brenda Payne a hug. No way, no chance. Then he looked at the girl in front of him, crying in the snow. The Christmasaurus snorted like a horse and frowned at William. "Hug." William rolled his eyes. "Okay." He wheeled his chair over a little closer to Brenda, who was still crying with her face in her hands. He looked at the dinosaur one last time and gave him a look that meant, "You'd better be right about this." Then he took a deep breath, closed his eyes, leant forward with his arms wide open, and gave the meanest girl in school possibly in the world a warm, friendly hug. When he opened his eyes, he was shocked to find that Brenda was hugging him back. Then suddenly they both dropped their arms, stared to the ground awkwardly. "Don't you dare tell anyone that," said Brenda. "Don't worry, I definitely won't," replied William. Then he saw from the corner of Brenda's mouth rise up into a perfectly little smile again. "Thanks though," she said. I needed that. The Christmasaurus poked his head out over and looked at William, as if to say, I told you so.